Welcome to a Friday edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside our NBA insider, Bill Ryder. And look at this, rejoining the program in studio after some much-needed R&R. Ashley Nicole Moss is back. Welcome back,
Hi,
Ash.
everyone. Well, it's nice to see you. Well, listen, I appeared on the show via a VO, or straight to cam, rather, that I did for John and Chris Walker, where I heard they appreciated it immensely. So you're welcome.
I don't know what you're talking about. Nothing happened with the Knicks while you were gone. All right, later in the show, we will talk about Ashley's Knicks. We'll also get into Bill's top 5 trade targets. We'll talk about the biggest storylines for teams this offseason, and we will discuss some big name free agents and where they might land when free agency officially begins on Sunday. Lots to get into. But first, we got to discuss Bronny James making his entry into the NBA.
Did he get drafted
He was taking
last
55
night?
Because he did get drafted last night.
Shocker.
Unfortunately, he went 55 to the Lakers because the Celtics were too cowardly to take him at 54 and do the funnier thing. Here's some reaction from after Bronny was taken by the Lakers at 55. Okay, no audio on this. Good to know. He's celebrating with his family. They're giving him a Lakers hat. I believe this is his brother's video, where the entire family and friends are there. And it looks like a nice little moment for Bronny James. Ash, you haven't been on the program for a minute. Let's start with you. This is something that's been barreling down the road for a while now. The worst kept secret in the NBA was that he was going to land on the Lakers. They strong-armed this into happening. How do you feel about Bronny and LeBron teaming up with the Lakers?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations to the James family. All jokes aside, you know, they're still parents at the end of the day, and you want to see your kids succeed, you know, in any way, shape, or form that they can, and however that happens. Also, shout out to Bronny's suit. Can we roll this video while I talk about it? The fashionista in me, all eyes were on this suit. First of all, the color is fantastic. I'm a big fan of brown as of late, but look at the brooch. Can we talk about the brooch? This is regal. This is I am royalty, basketball
like
royalty. It is phenomenal. The suit is great. The braids, the cornrows to the back are clean, sharp. Looks like he just got those done that day. The jewelry is just the right amount. Everyone's arguing about nepotism and all that, which I know we'll get into. We got to focus on the suit game. The brooch alone took it over the edge. So, Bronny, if you're going to get drafted, that's the way to do it. Listen, not a surprise. I think we were all kind of watching, not because we were, you know, expecting it not to happen. I think we were watching more so along the lines, hoping something more chaotic would happen. John, like you said, the Celtics take him, or my Knicks took him, or something that wasn't expected happened. But as, you know, the reports that were coming out throughout the broadcast, the James family, or Rich Paul specifically, made it very, very clear to teams around the league, if you take him, he is going to Australia. Took a page out of the Archie Manning playbook, if you will, said if you take Eli, he's not going to play for you. He's only playing for one team. So, Bill, obviously you can speak to this more, but I thought the Australia thing was a little crazy. It was kind of insane, but Stephen A. Smith, I think, pointed out, like, why is this is the first time we're hearing about it. Maybe that, but I think we all knew that Rich Paul was going to make sure that only the Lakers got their hands on Bronny James. Now, how that happened is different, but we all knew that that was going to be the case.
John used the right term. It's such a strong arm move. And look, maybe I'm being Pollyannish. Let me just interpret, though, what Rich Paul was actually saying, because the threat isn't just he's going to go to Australia, and if you draft him, Boston Celtics as a spite move, you'll lose Bronny. Yeah. It's also an implicit threat that you will get sideways with Klutch Sports, which is the agency they represent. Yes. And I think that's the bigger threat. Because he can't say what I'm about to say he was actually saying out loud, or there are actual problems the NBA probably has to react. But the message isn't just Australia. It's if you draft this kid, you are dead to us, and the clients you have or want will be problematic for you. That's an organizational issue. But also GMs get fired. And when GMs get fired, their way back into the league is to basically become an assistant GM or a scout or be some sort of advisor with another organization. And if you're a GM today who drafts Bronny and you're fired, and this happens 3 or 4 years from now, and you are persona non grata to Klutch Sports, you're not getting back in the NBA. So I have a problem with it. Ash, I'm with you. I'm great, happy for the James fan. 2 things can be true at once. LeBron James is going to use all of his power. He wants to play with his kid. People in this world take what they're able to take. Good for them. But I think bad for the NBA that LeBron James, an active player, is able to have basically the agency he created through his friend dictate to teams with real threats who they can and cannot take in the NBA draft.
That's kind of why I wanted the Celtics to do it, because in addition to it being hilarious, they don't, last time I checked, they don't have many Klutch clients anyway. But you're right, Bill. I mean, that it was a not so veiled threat that if you do this, you're going to have a serious problem with Klutch Sports moving forward. To Ashley's point about the whole nepotism thing, look, they want to play together. LeBron's been setting this up for a while. LeBron gets what he wants. I think he's probably earned the right to play with his kid if that's his desire, and that obviously is his desire. And it's not like this doesn't exist in the NBA. Thanasis Antetokounmpo should not be in the NBA. He was barely in the Greek League. He made the Greek League All-Stars with Panathinaikos. But when Rick Pitino was the head coach, he kind of eye rolled about that, like just being a last name thing. Also, Brian Colangelo, if it wasn't for Jerry Colangelo, Brian Colangelo, who's now, I believe, in Australia, ironically enough, he wouldn't have been in there either. Somebody mentioned to me, though, skill-wise, that this is sort of like a Ken Griffey Jr. teaming up with Ken Griffey Sr. situation, only in terms of talent, Bronny is kind of the elder guy. He's kind of like the 42-year-old dad because he's not as good. Ashley's kind of laughing about this, but I don't know that he's very good, and I'm a little worried about the situation.
He's not good enough.
So here's the thing, right? We've had this conversation before. I know we disagree in terms of how we feel about nepotism. I personally don't have an issue with it to a degree, and I will say why. I think that nepotism is a system that has existed in this country for decades, and it's how some of the richest families in the world stay rich. I'm a Cowboys fan. The entire front office is made up of Joneses. And when Jerry Jones is no longer the owner, his son will step in. Exactly. But look, here's the thing. Nepotism exists, and it's how people keep opportunities and wealth within their particular family. So I'm not mad at LeBron James for taking a system, putting himself in the situation to take advantage of a system that has been in place way before he even stepped into the NBA. He utilized a system, and he's utilizing that to help his son not only live out his dream, but also to keep the James family in the NBA. Not mad at it. Now, here's where it gets sticky, right? You have one or two options. Bronny has one or two options in this scenario, and this is where people have, sour feelings about nepotism, is you had the opportunity to wash all of that away if you go out there and you ball out, right? LeBron's not going to score points for you. He's not going to play defense for you. He's not going to go ahead and assist the ball for you and all that. That's on you. If Bronny goes out there and turns out to be a lot better than what people have seen so far, and he gets drastically better, then all that nepotism stuff goes out of the way because he's put the work in, and now he's a player in his own right. And yes, people will continue to say, well, he only got into the league, because of his dad and because of his last name. Fair, but that's not what's going to keep him in the league once LeBron is retired, especially if he puts in the work. Now, if that's not the case, and he ends up staying the player that we have seen thus far, that's not necessarily NBA ready, then that nepotism thing becomes the only thing that surrounds Bronny. There are actors who come from famous families who go on to have illustrious, lucrative careers, Oscar-winning careers in their own right. And yeah, you remember that they have a famous dad or a famous mom, but you also remember their skill set as an individual. So I think that two things can be true. Nepotism can get you places, but the only time it becomes problematic is when you don't have a skill set that allows you or shows that you're deserving of to stay in the position that you have been given because of who you know or who you come from.
I mean, for every Michael Douglas, there's a Baldwin brother, right? So
look at Jamie Lee Curtis.
Can get you. I mean, but here's the worry that I have for Bronny. Let's make this about Bronny. Sports is the ultimate meritocracy. You can hide as a Nepo kid in a lot of businesses, including, frankly, in the business that we're in. In most businesses, there's a lot of jobs. There's not as much scrutiny. Things are subjective, including art, like film. Not true in sports. If Bronny James isn't good enough, his entire career will be the kid who got drafted who should not have gotten drafted. And so my hope, and I think it's far-fetched, and I'm with you. I mean, look, I think what LeBron – I don't think what LeBron did is wrong, but I don't think it's right if you're everybody else. We sort of operate in the best interest of the people we love. That doesn't always make it okay. I understand why LeBron did what he did. He's now got to, I think, for Bronny to succeed, do the hardest thing he's ever done in his career, and that is back off, cede power, and get out of the way. Because maybe the Lakers have a really good plan, but you've got LeBron's handpicked coach, who is his podcast partner, who just got hired, who's basically in charge of developing this young player. What happens if LeBron thinks that Bronny needs less time in the G League than Rob Pelinka? what if LeBron, and he hasn't always been rational on his son. See his tweet from a year ago where he tweeted, remember, like, these guys, these league pass losers aren't as good as my kid. What if LeBron wants Bronny getting any minutes or more minutes than JJ Redick wants? What if whatever developmental plan the Lakers come up with, guys, is vastly different than what LeBron thinks? I know LeBron's a genius, and I know LeBron loves his son. He has been a pretty bad shadow GM. I mean, his brilliance, and this happens to all-time greats, doesn't always translate to being able to sort of make the right decision. So I'm with you, Ashon. I'm not mad at the James family. I'm very worried that Bronny will fail because this is going to be measured in a real way that you can't hide when you get out on the court. And if LeBron doesn't let him have some ups and downs, be developed by this Lakers organization LeBron wanted to be a part of, if LeBron is helicopter parenting from hell, I don't think that's going to end well for Bronny.
Yeah, I think skill set wise, Bronny's going to have to work on his game for sure. But everything that you just mentioned, Bill, about like LeBron wanted this situation, but it's not necessarily going to be a clean situation. It could be really sticky for all the reasons you outlined, where all of a sudden, yeah, like if he wants to get some more minutes for his kid, what happens there if there's pushback between Pelinka or JJ Redick? I mean, you're setting yourself up and your kid for some significant tension. I will say this, though. It's going to be really great content for us. Summer League is going to be bananas for Bronny James. Like, that's going to be an absolute circus.
If he plays.
Why wouldn't he play?
He'll play.
He doesn't have to play. It's not like it's required. It's not required. Remember, there was a whole conversation of whether or not Wemby was going to play in Summer League. He ended up playing.
He'll get the minutes, I think. I think here's the bigger question is for me.
Listen, to your point, it would be of his benefit to play, right? But listen, I had a conversation with a few guys upstairs in the newsroom, and they were split, right? Some people were saying, well, he's not NBA ready. Going out there and playing will just remind everyone just how not NBA ready you are. So that's one side of the argument. But the other side is like he can go out there.
Summer League. If you don't play in Summer League after getting drafted, that's going to be like a narrative that nobody will let go. That'll be a bone in everybody's face.
But couldn't you see LeBron, to Ash's point, what if LeBron's like, I don't want him playing all the Summer League games, A, B, and C, and Pelinka goes, LeBron, big guy,
because it's not required. Like, he should play.
He's got to play every minute.
But if he doesn't, it's not like he's committing some sort of like, sin. Like, he doesn't have to play, just like he didn't have to. I mean, yeah, but we're talking about the same draftee who was refusing workouts with every team but the Suns and the Lakers. The rules don't apply to him, and they've already showcased that they're going to go ahead and navigate this entire process the way that they want to and not the way that it's traditionally done. So, yes, he should play. I would not be surprised if there was a situation or a world in which he doesn't play. That's all I'm saying. It would not shock me.
I'd be floored. I'd be floored. You can't take the kid and not play him. So what? You're just not going to play a basketball player? That doesn't make any sense to me. That would just create a narrative that I don't think that they'd be willing to go. That's a road that they would not be willing to go down. I don't think, because you're inviting so much scrutiny.
If you get 2 or 3 really, or like, because they're going to be in Sacramento first and then in Vegas. If you get like a string of great Bronny games, you should play him. But you might just Costanza this thing and be like, I'm out, just leave it on a high note. He'll play all the minutes.
The only last thing I'll say here, and then we're going to go to break. If he doesn't pan out, he's the 55th pick in the draft. That happens all the time. The only problem is that his last name is James, so he's going to get scrutinized more than another kid who got picked at 55 and didn't pan out would otherwise. But, that's what happens when you're LeBron's son.
I don't think it's the only thing, though. I'm going to put this on LeBron. He didn't have to be the 55th pick. What really happens is you squander what could have been an NBA career, because had he gone to college for 1 or 2 more years, he might have been a first-round pick. And I mean, you're right in terms of the pick, but I still think they're jeopardizing. If he doesn't work out, they have jeopardized a career that I think had more promise if it had more time in college.
Judging by the conversation that we just had, I think this is probably the last time we'll even talk about Bronny. So he'll just go off and live his life, and it'll be fine. All right, now we are going to take a break, and then on the other side, we're going to get into free agency and the offseason. It's heating up. Very exciting. Bill's going to run us through his top 5 trade targets. On the other side, you're watching Beyond the Arc, and this is CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc on a Friday. Gang's all here. We're reunited. Very exciting. Free agency Big time offseason is coming at us. There's going to be a lot of movement. Bill has been so kind as to compile a list of his top trade targets. Not so much the guys that he anticipates will get traded, right, Bill? But guys that maybe should be targeted.
Yeah, and I think that caveat mostly applies to Kevin Durant. So this is a plea. This is just a plea for reason to Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Suns, who, as you guys know, tweeted out that Kevin Durant loves Phoenix and Phoenix loves Kevin Durant. He's not going anywhere. And maybe you all see this differently. As I look at the West and you try to guess as best you can what roster constructions will look like after free agency, there's no scenario where this Phoenix team is a playoff team for me. I mean, a play-in team, maybe. The idea of trading Kevin Durant for a total reboot or maybe something where you get some guys now in order to put something around Devin Booker, have some flexibility, get out of the second apron, it makes a lot of sense, guys. You tell me what you think. If I am Phoenix and I'm operating in a way that is reasonable, I'm going to my owner and saying, we messed up. This doesn't work. We can't move on from Bradley Beal because he has a no-trade clause. We're not moving on from Booker. Let's explore Kevin Durant trades and see if we can get out of this mess we put ourselves in.
Okay, so here's the thing. In a perfect world, yeah, I agree with you, though. I think the Suns are in very, very deep. Bradley Beal is going to suck up a lot of money. I don't see them moving Devin Booker. He's still very, very young, and I think that, relatively speaking, and I think that he still can be the focal point of this Phoenix Suns team. With that said, Kevin Durant, I don't know if he has a no trade clause in his deal. I don't believe that he does. But I don't see him allowing the Suns to trade him without going kicking and screaming. We're talking about KD, who is now on his 4th NBA team, and he has been in
changing teams.
No, but he's been in constant pursuit for a championship on his own accord. And it didn't happen in Brooklyn. It obviously didn't happen in OKC. To your point, John, it's not going to happen in Phoenix. But I think that KD, for all of, the way that he presents himself about not caring and trolling back at people who troll him, I do believe there's a part of him that cares about the perception of his legacy. And I just don't see at this stage in his career, and again, if he gets traded, that's not his fault, but common sense is not that common. I don't see him being willing to leave the Phoenix Suns, even if the future there means no championship, because that would just be absolutely abysmal for a legacy that a lot of people are constantly throwing stones at. I think he's going to see through whatever it is that the Phoenix Suns are trying to do, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I do not see him leaving Phoenix. I would be dumbfounded if that was the case.
If I was Phoenix, Bill, I would do exactly what you're saying, which is hit the hard reset on this thing and ship him out, especially because so the Houston Rockets have shown interest. There's been all these rumors about them being interested in Kevin Durant. They made a trade the other day as a consequence of the Knicks and the Nets trade, where they ended up trading with the Nets in order to gain control of some of those Phoenix picks, right? So they're making a bet that, hey, this thing is not going to go good. And at some point, the Suns are going to wise up and go, we want our draft back and we got to unplug this thing. And KD is the one piece that we can move. If I'm the Rockets, Bill, we talked about this yesterday. I don't want any part of that. I have a really good team right now with some extra picks. I want to see what Alperen Şengün and Jalen Green and Jabari Smith look like. The team is young and good right now. See what they can be. You don't have to rush this thing. I get it from the Phoenix side. From the Phoenix side, you're absolutely right. From the Rocket side, their cap situation is awesome. Their draft situation is awesome. They've got all these nice young players. Let's see what it could be. You don't have to rush it.
I just don't see Phoenix even presenting a trade to Kevin Durant and his team and saying, okay, so I really believe that they believe, meaning the Phoenix Suns believe, even though it's insane, I really believe that they believe they can run it back and be better than they were this time last year.
They are going to run it back.
They
definitely are doing that.
I really do believe that they think that they can be better than what transpired last season or this past season. In their minds, I think that they believe those three guys with more time, with more health permitted, can actually go ahead and make a run in the West. It may be crazy, it may be far-fetched, but I really believe they believe that.
They have no choice but to believe it.
I mean, that too.
Yeah, I had this conversation with Avery Johnson last night in HQ, and his point was you can't trade Durant away because he'll be in the lottery for the next 3 years, you're going to be in the lottery for the next few years anyway.
No, they're not. They're not going to be that bad, Bill. Stop it.
I don't know.
There's a world. But yeah, I mean, look, they were a playing team, right? I mean, what if in a Western Conference that's looking for 12 teams,
Houston
possibly
gets better.
13.
Memphis is back.
Exactly. There's a world where if they miss out in the play-in or they're like an 8, 9, 10, like what are you getting for your return? If I'm them, I'm looking at this going 8, 9, 10 is not good enough. We're not making a run in the Western Conference. We should try to figure out how to fix this thing. And the only way to fix this thing is to unplug the one guy that you can unplug, and it's KD.
The Warriors trade for my number 2 on this list, which is hard to do given some of the realities. But number 2 on the list is Paul George, and Brian Winters had brought up that there might be some interest. Now, it sounds like it's far-fetched, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's not an impossibility. And if you're Paul George, and it sounds like he is fed up with the Clippers, and it's gotten personal, as I understand it, has been, I think, reported, and you're looking around, no disrespect to Philly, John, because I guess that's on the list, but he's a West Coast guy. He's from Palmdale. It's outside of L.A. You're not that far, and you're the Bay. So if the Warriors made a move for Paul George, all of a sudden that's another team that I think clearly leaps the Suns. And,
but is that?
And I think PG.
Is that a downgrade though? Because
I don't think so. I think
no.
PG,
I mean, think about it like this, right? In the Western Conference, you guys are talking about. We're talking about it. It's going to look drastically different, next season, just because of all the teams that were kind of dealing with injuries, and the young teams now have another year of experience under their belts, and the changing of the guards happening. All those talking points that we've spoken to, right? So the Clippers, for how they had fallen through later in the season, they were one of the best teams in the Western Conference when they were cooking, when they were moving, when they were grooving, and everything was, copacetic. They were one of the better teams in the Western Conference. The Warriors were not. The Warriors were dealing with a lot of issues, and Steph Curry, as amazing as he is, he's just not enough to go ahead and bring this Warriors team to playoff contention with how the Western Conference looks. So if you're Paul George,
a lot of that was Draymond's suspension, though.
I mean, right? Clay being very up and down and not, So
I think Clay probably goes away in this scenario.
But what I'm saying is the Clippers, at least looking at the current landscape, the Clippers are ahead of the Warriors in terms of a team that could make a deeper run in the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're Paul George, wouldn't you rather go to an Eastern Conference where the discrepancy between real playoff teams and everybody else is a lot larger than trying to battle your way through the Western Conference, going to a team that's probably a couple notches below you?
It depends what you want. Are you chasing? How do you balance your lifestyle and where you live? And this guy is a little bit older. He's a veteran. He's been around. It's not like he's 25 years old with winning. And no disrespect to Philly, I'm just guessing. I don't know. I think Paul George would rather have a harder row to hoe in Golden State, close to home, than spend the beautiful winters in Philadelphia, in that very understanding sports town. When things go wrong, the fans are really reasonable. But you're right. Like, Philly's also a team that could target him for sure in a sign and trade.
We'll get to Philly later. We should mention about the Warriors. You did note, Bill, that it's kind of the Warriors getting PG is going to be hard, but not impossible. Today they had a deadline on Chris Paul's $30 million contract, and both sides agreed to push that back. And the reason why they agreed to push that back is exactly what you're talking about, because they're still kicking the tires on potentially whether or not they could add somebody through a sign and trade. And somebody that they'd really like to add through a sign and trade would be, of course, Paul George. A couple more minutes here, and then we're going to go to break. Take us through the other ones. You had Cat. Who else? Zach LaVine on the list.
Yeah, Who's so Cat's on there, and that's more. Yeah, Cat's a decision really about, do you want to be in the second apron? Do you feel like you could get more flexibility? Obviously, there's an argument just to keep things as they are. Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, well, I think absolutely one will be available, maybe both. Certainly that's the belief around the NBA, as they decide what kind of rebuild Landry Fields wants to do. And then Zach LaVine has been in trade rumors with the Bulls. I looked it up since 1903, so that's just like a requirement that it goes on goes on the list. But DeRozan's a free agent, so he'll probably, I would presume, be somewhere else. Maybe Chicago will finally just do the rebuild they need to do, and Zach LaVine obviously would have some suitors out there.
They might have to pay to get somebody to take Zach LaVine, but yes, it's going to be a very interesting offseason. We are going to take a break. On the other side, we're going to get into why it's going to be an interesting offseason, some of the biggest storylines this summer that we're excited about, and that's going to include, Ashley hasn't talked about it yet, her New York Knicks making moves. We'll get into that on Beyond the Arc. She's so excited. Right here on CBS Sports Network. All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc on a Friday. John, Ashley, and Bill here. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network. We are also a podcast. You can find us wherever you get your favorite shows. Please download, subscribe, and leave us a review. All right, Ashley, you were gone when all the fun Knicks stuff happened, but they got significantly better. Multiple things are true here. They re-signed OG Anunoby to a 5-year deal worth $212 million, 212.5. You can't forget the 0.5. And they also acquire Mikal Bridges, who I want to say first, because I know you're going to get upset when I say the second part. But the first part is I love Mikal Bridges. I loved him for the 12 and a half seconds that the Sixers had him after drafting him before they traded him to Phoenix. I think he's really good. I also think 5 first-rounders and 4 unprotecteds and a pick swap for a guy who's never made an all-star game is kind of wild, but the Knicks are really, really good. You should probably be very excited despite the cost.
I am very excited, and I think the cost is expected, right? Because the Knicks want to win, and they want to win now. They have a window, striking while the iron is hot, right? Because you have figured out a formula that works well together with those Villanova Knicks. Obviously, Julius Randle, when he is healthy, he's an asset to the team. So they are in competition now with the better teams in the Eastern Conference. You talk about the reigning champs and the Celtics. The Bucks, when they're healthy, they're a contender. The 76ers, that series went to 7, even, it's 6, even with an injured Joel Embiid. So it was kind of necessary to get an additional piece that's going to help you get over that next hump, right? You have a player in Mikal Bridges who plays defense. He can shoot the 3. It's another reliable scorer on the floor. His availability is insane. 474 games since high school, which is absolutely.
It's a nice hedge.
Tibbs,
hedge against OG.
Tibbs, Tibbs is drooling at the mouth hearing that availability from Bridges. And I think, again, chemistry won't be an issue. Those guys know each other. They know the ins and outs of playing with each other. You needed to make this move. The Knicks were able to get some of those second rounders back in some trades that they did during the draft this year. But was it costly, to your point, for someone who is not an all-star, who's not a quote-unquote superstar? Sure. Was it costly for what you need to accomplish this moment in time, in this window of time, in the Eastern Conference, in the NBA as a whole? If you're the New York Knicks, no, the Knicks needed something, and that something was Mikal Bridges.
I love it, and I don't care. I'm not a Knicks fan, but I've spent a generation watching the Knicks and a huge chunk of that time covering the NBA where the Knicks have been a joke. I mean, really the highlight was the Linsanity stretch, which was a Mike D'Antoni illusion that lasted 3 or 4 weeks, or maybe that year with Melo where they won whatever it was, 52 games. So you have an actual window, I'm happy for you, Ash. I really am. I think they're not at the Celtics level, but I think they're just below them. And it's just thinking about Anunoby and Bridges, it's really close. So here's the thing. It's not, when we rank teams next year, it's not going to be 1 and 2. It's going to be 1A and 1B, and then we're going to go to 3, whoever that happens to be. And the way that Anunoby and Bridges can play, I guess, wing defenders and do the things that the Celtics do so well, how many of these guys can score and can switch and play both sides of the ball? Credit to Leon Rose, who runs basketball operations and is basically the J.D. Salinger of general managers, because he's elusive and won't talk to anybody, is mysterious. Was at CAA. What he's done, I think, is nothing short of a basketball miracle. And this is the price you pay now. I mean, Rudy Gobert cost whatever it was for. So, Ashley, congratulations. I don't know if this is finals or conference finals, but it's a huge win. It's beautiful, and I really hope your head coach does not play OG Anunoby 42 minutes a game down the stretch, because he doesn't have to. Like, you really can have some balance and have some depth here. It's outstandingly exciting.
At present, they have the Knicks have the 5th best odds to win the title next year. It's the Celtics first, then the Thunder, the Mavs, and the Nuggets, and then the Knicks. To Bill's point about it being 1A and 1B, I think it's clearly Celtics and Knicks in the Eastern Conference next year, and then everybody else. And there's a case, the first 5 for both teams are really close. There's a case, and this is going to be a problem for Tibbs, where you could say the Knicks after the first 5 are deeper than the Celtics, because Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart and Deuce McBride and whichever center you end up having are going to be really good and better probably than whatever the Celtics have to offer. So it's going to be interesting to see how Tibbs manages that. I want to mention another team in the Eastern Conference that is, let's call them less deep than the Knicks. Actually, you mentioned the Bucks and then the Sixers. The Sixers have right now, they have Joel Embiid. They're going to re-sign Tyrese Maxey. They drafted Jared McCain from Duke. with the 16th overall pick. As Bill and I were talking about in the break, they took Adam Bona from UCLA, who's a 6'8" center, I guess becomes the backup to Joel Embiid. This whole thing has been building for quite some time to this offseason where they could free up, in the neighborhood of, I'm approximating $60 million. This was Daryl Morey's grand plan. He's going to go out, he's going to target people in free agency, he's going to sign them into cap space, or he's going to go out and make some moves. As this thing continues, it looks increasingly less likely that they're going to end up with Paul George, at which point I'm asking you guys what they do here. Do they trade for Brandon Ingram? It's just like a series of imperfect options. Do they sign KCP or DeMar DeRozan or Klay Thompson? That's imperfect. The Nets are about to have a fire sale. You got Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith. I don't like any of these options as much as I liked Paul George, and this is really on Daryl Morey because this is what he wanted.
I mean, listen, here's the issue, right? You have
to do on the Sixers.
You have to do something, right? Because it's a direct contrast to what we're talking about with the Knicks, where their window is wide open because of where their window is closing in Philly, because Joel Embiid is constantly injured, and every year he gets older, and every year you run into the risk of that being the injury that just ultimately changes him as a player. And you have to strike while you still have him, right? So that's when we had that argument about, whether he should play in the Olympics or in that playoff series as a whole. That's part of my reasoning behind it, is because he's so injury prone. You want him for as much of a regular season as you can have him, because you need him to go ahead and stay in the standings when you talk about the playoffs, right? It's going to be interesting because Tobias Harris, you can pretty much expect he's going to be shipped out. But if you're not able to
he's gone.
He's going to be out of there. But you need to go ahead and surround Joel Embiid with talent that alleviates some of the pressure off of him. And you need to do that now, not next season, not the season after. And the Nets having a fire sale will be beneficial. How funny would it be if they brought Ben Simmons back to Philly? That'd be great.
That's not happening, but that would be funny.
That would be funny. But in all seriousness, the roster has a lot of question marks and not enough answers. And with a team that's window gets closed, that's close. What's the word I'm looking for? That closes each and more. Oh my gosh, the window closes more every season. You need to make a move, and you need to make a move now.
I mean, there is no roster, and yet I would rather be the Sixers, and I mean this. I'd rather be the Sixers than the Warriors, than the Lakers, or the Suns, teams that think or pretend that they think that they're contenders. You still have Embiid and Maxey. And so there's a few things here. You're right, John. You're probably not getting PG. And so I think Klay Thompson becomes an interesting idea. I mean, DeMar DeRozan, you could give, a deal for a couple years. But I think a backup plan potentially for Philly is you fill out some of the roster, you don't land a big player, and you create you leave some flexibility, because Daryl Morey's also the kind of guy who wouldn't mind if he swings and misses in this free agency class, just saying, all right, I'll wait to the next disgruntled stars, disgruntled the trade deadline. And we are having conversations on Beyond the Arc starting in, December, about X player who's miserable and angry, and maybe he'll be a Sixer. So the thing is, Daryl does a great job of selling the future, being right around the corner.
Yes.
But realistically,
and we're
John,
almost there.
But realistically, who's out there that would be you need a plug and play player for Philly. That's Paul
Klay
George,
Thompson.
Is Klay Thompson plug and play? I mean, he's been so up and down at this stage in his career. Can you put him next to a Joel Embiid and rely on him as the 1B?
How much you going to pay him is the question, right? And would he take? He's going to want years. Would he take 2 years? He'll want 3. But he still scored, 17 or 18 points a game. He's not the player that he was. But look, if the Sixers had a complete roster and it was pretty good and they could afford Klay Thompson, I'd say it's great. There's just so many puzzle pieces missing. It's hard to know. But I like Klay Thompson as a player and a piece in the right place. And they have cap space.
They don't have a complete roster. They have a very incomplete roster. You were right. Daryl Morey is really good at selling the future. That's what I worry, that he's going to kick the can down the road. I think that it's really pretty dark when you're like, I'd rather be the Sixers than the Suns. And I go, yeah, you're right. But man, that's bleak. All right, we're going to take another quick break here. And then on the other side, we're going to talk about some Western Conference teams and some fun storylines as the offseason gets underway. We're up and running. Oh, by the way, Ashley, you mentioned Joel Embiid and whether or not he was, he should take off from the Olympics. Apparently he is, quote, according to Steve Kerr, good to go for Team USA training camp. Everything's turning up sunny in Philadelphia. Per usual, what could go wrong? You're watching Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. You're watching us on CBS Sports Network. You can also find us on our YouTube page. Check that out at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment, all that stuff. We're going to go to the Western Conference for some storylines here. The Nuggets are in a very interesting situation, gang. Their cap space is not great. They're around $8 million under the first apron and around $19 million under the second apron, which is why they ended up dumping Reggie Jackson in 3 seconds to the Hornets yesterday. That saves them like $5.25 million. Just so like a little bit of housekeeping there. But critically for this team, we all know their starting five, when they have their starting five, is as good as anybody in the NBA. The problem is KCP might walk. And if KCP walks, what you're looking at here is Calvin Booth, after he got graduated to run basketball ops for the Nuggets, he made 2 really good moves. He signed Bruce Brown with a taxpayer mid-level exception, and then he traded for KCP from the Wiz. And that completed their team, and they won a championship. Well, Bruce Brown left. And now KCP might opt out and walk. And Bill, if that happens, now all of a sudden this team is starting to crumble because you need to pay Jamal Murray. You're going into the final year of Aaron Gordon's deal, and you're looking at replacing 2 critical pieces on a championship team with the next man up of Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. I don't love this for the Nuggets.
With a championship window that is right now, and I love movie trailers. I'm weirdly obsessed with them. I watch them all the time. This is a movie trailer for the NBA and what is coming for competitive basketball teams as they deal with having to pay guys money and extend guys and make decisions when you have success. It's not like the Warriors back in the day or other teams where you can just pay the money and pay the tax. There are going to be real restrictions.
Yep.
Klay Thompson was linked to this team earlier today in a report. And John, I know you looked at the numbers in a way that I haven't, but my first blush was I don't even know how that makes sense financially. It's hard to even conceive of players that would be worthy of sort of the goals of the Nuggets. And I would imagine Denver could attract some real players if they had the flexibility for the reasons, John, you just walked us through. They, just like a lot of other teams, and even bad teams like the Lakers with D'Lo, they need KCP to stay. The players have all the leverage in these situations because it's really hard to replace these guys if they walk out the door when you're in this spot financially.
Not only that, but they're about to make a whole lot of money with this new CBA and these new media rights and all of that, and they know it, and their agents know it. But when talking about the Nuggets, this is going to be huge because when you compare the Nuggets team from this season to the Nuggets team that when they won the championship, it's not like they were the deepest team out there. It's not like they were the Boston Celtics, but they had a really solid starting five, and they had 3 guys on the bench that you could rely on and implement into the rotation, and that ultimately helped them be dominant in the regular season, be dominant in the playoffs, and ultimately win the chip. This time around, you saw what missing some of those guys did to this Denver Nuggets team, especially when it came to an unreliable Jamal Murray. A lot of the times he wasn't looking himself completely. Jokic sometimes was up and down in his games, although he was the most consistent factor. So if you lose yet another piece of that reliability, this Denver Nuggets team goes from a team that people are always constantly putting in the conversation since they've won the championship to now you're saying, is this even a playoff team? Could it be a play-in team with how talented the Western Conference is and continuing to get?
They're a playoff team for me, but I think
you're right. Well, like bottom tier, they're not top tier.
They're getting worse, a little worse. Weapons getting better. And John, I think the other interesting thing is, again, this reflects other realities of other teams. Ash, you didn't mention Michael Porter Jr. because he didn't earn a mention, but he gets paid like he should be mentioned. And John, the question becomes, and it's sort of like Cat, right? And you've won a championship, and he didn't play well in that finals, and he does not play well in the playoffs in general. Do you look at moving MPJ in that contract to try to create some flexibility and some change?
Yeah, that's something that we talked about, right? That might be a guy that you could unplug and get something for because they are limited. So for people who aren't quite as like into the weeds on the salary cap as maybe sometimes I can be, the new CBA kicks in this weekend, and there's 2 different aprons. And if you're pushed up against either of these aprons, it makes your team building really complicated, which is why if KCP leaves, it's going to really leave the Denver Nuggets in a lurch. If you're at the first apron, it means no sign and trades, no trade exceptions, and no taking back money in trades. If you're at the second apron, that's when you're really in the thick of it and you're screwed. That's all of the above things that we talked about in the first apron. Plus, you can't aggregate salaries. You can't take cash back. Your pick 7 years in the future gets frozen. Basically, it's kind of why I thought the Celtics were so smart to make those moves last year. They don't care that they're in the second apron because their first 5 guys are locked in.
if you're in the second apron for 3 out of 5 years, I think it is, down the line, your first round pick goes to the end of the draft. I mean,
yes, you go to the back of the line.
That's down the road, but there's these really punitive measures that are coming for teams. It is brutal.
Yes. Yes. So the Nuggets are in that situation. That's another reason why I liked what the Wolves did on draft night, because they're in the same situation. They can't really add to that team, but by trading for Rob Dillingham, they get a nice young scorer at a cost-controlled point that you could stick next to Anthony Edwards in their backcourt. I thought that was a smart move by them. The Lakers are another team that is looking at cap hell here. They got to figure out what's going to happen with LeBron James. He has until the 29th tomorrow to decide whether or not he's going to pick up his $51.4 million option. He's not going anywhere. They just got Bronny. The question is, what kind of contract is he going to be on? And the other question is, and you see here on the screen that D'Angelo Russell has a decision to make, Ash, where if he picks up his $18.7 million option, that would be huge for the Lakers because, one, they could use shooting, and two, they could always flip him in a deal down the line. If he doesn't, for the same reasons we just talked about with the Nuggets, that's going to make things more difficult for the Lakers. But they got some questions to answer here.
They have a lot of questions to answer, and it doesn't seem like we're getting any of these answers anytime soon. I think the Lakers also need to figure out what the realistic expectations are for this team. And I know when you say realistic in Lakers, that's usually not always the case, and usually never is the case. But they really have to, because we keep talking about it. It's a Western Conference that doesn't look like the Western Conference they used to dominate every single season. This is a drastically different era in the NBA. We're seeing young players that now have a year of experience under their belt, sometimes two, depending on how quickly those teams were put together. And the Lakers have to keep up, and they need to figure out a way to keep up. And they can't keep trying to cut corners to go ahead and hopefully win another championship to appease LeBron. So if you're going to try to compete, you need to build a roster that's going to help you to compete, and not try to build a roster that's going to help you potentially microwave a championship. The league does not work like that anymore. You see it in Phoenix. You've seen it throughout other teams. It does not work like that anymore. And the Lakers need to stop trying to pretend that it does.
Good luck, Lakers. You hired a guy that does a podcast. You drafted LeBron's son. LeBron turns 40 in December. I wish you all the luck in the world. And you're in the West. Good luck.
They have a lot of questions. I don't know that they'll be able to answer any of them, but it's going to be super fun for us to watch. I have a feeling that we're going to be talking about the Lakers this offseason. All right, one more quick break, and then we will wrap up the show on a Friday as free agency gets underway. You are watching Beyond the Arc on CBS Sports Network. Welcome back to Beyond the Arc, wrapping up the show on a Friday. Bill, you got a question for us.
All right, I'm just curious who you think will have a more successful Lakers career, JJ Redick or Bronny James?
Oh, wow, great question.
I'm not answering that question.
Why not?
Why are you not answering?
I wish well for all parties involved.
JJ. I'm going to go with JJ because he'll get something out of it.
Same.
I don't know what we're going to get out of Bronny James, but we'll see. It's going to be fun to find out. That's going to do it for us today, though. Free agency begins on Sunday. We might have an emergency pod for you on Sunday. There could be some YouTube activity. Be sure to check all of that out. And we'll be back here on CBS Sports Network to review free agency on Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern. But for now, for our NBA insider Bill Ryder, for Ashley Nicole Moss, who is back in studio celebrating her triumphant offseason with the New York Knicks, I am John Gonzalez. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and enjoy your weekend.